the child queen, married at 6, dead in childbirth. She was only 6 years old when the bells began to ring across the great cathedral. Draped in embroidered silk, her steps were small and unsure, but all eyes were on her. She was a bride, too. Young to spell the word, too innocent to understand what it meant, a pawn in a grand game of power, married off to secure a throne she would never sit upon. Her name was Mary Tudor, and her fate was sealed the moment she whispered, "I do." This is the story of a child turned queen, of innocence traded for alliance, of a love that never bloomed, and a life that ended in silence within a candlelit chamber. This is the true tragedy out of a girl born into power, yet powerless to save herself. A crown too heavy. The marriage ceremony. It was the 15th of October, 1543. The stone pillars of Winchester Cathedral towered above the guests, rising like ancient giants, silent witnesses to what was unfolding below. Candles flickered in iron sconces. Their light danced across stained glass windows, breaking into shards of color that spilled across the cold marble floor. A choir sang softly. Hymns older than anyone present echoed through the hall. But even their beauty couldn't mask the truth. This was no ordinary wedding. At the center of it all stood Lady Mary Tudor, the youngest daughter of King Henry VII, and Queen Elizabeth of York. Beside her stood the groom, 15-year-old Duke Edward Seymour. Mary's gown was rich with gold thread, too heavy for her tiny shoulders. Rubies, the size of teardrops, glimmered across her bodice. Her hair had been braided with silken ribbons. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes wide, not with joy, but with confusion. She looked out at the sea of noble faces, perhaps searching for her mother, or maybe simply searching for comfort or meaning. She was 6 years old. Her small hand trembled as it reached for Edward's. The ceremony moved forward. Vows were recited, not by the children, but by their guardians. A ring was placed on her finger. It slipped easily onto the tiny hand. The crowd applauded politely, but beneath their smiles, everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a union born of love. It was a contract, a political, a strategy. A child had become a bride, to serve a cause she could never understand. A pawn in a game of thrones, political alliances. Mary Tudor's marriage was no celebration. It was a calculated move on a royal chessboard. In the uncertain world of 16th century England, every noble house craved security, and marriage was the most powerful weapon. Bloodlines were currency, alliances were tools of war, and children, they were pawns used without question. Mary's union with Edward Seymour wasn't shaped by affection. It was built on ambition. Edward was no ordinary noble. He was the nephew of Queen Jane Seymour, the third wife of King Henry VIII. His family had much to gain through this match, and the Tudors, still fresh from civil war, still haunted by whispers of illegitimacy, they needed loyalty. Mary's marriage was meant to cement that loyalty, to keep powerful nobles in check, to remind everyone who truly held the crown. At court, the nobles smiled. They raised goblets and called it a brilliant alliance. But behind the silk and silver, Mary was still just a child. She played with dolls. She cried when her nursemaid left the room. And though she wore a wedding ring, she was no wife. Not yet. A childhood denied, life in a stranger's house. After the ceremony, Mary was taken from the Tudor court and placed into the care of the Seymours. Her new home was grand, marble floors, tall windows. Silent halls, but it was cold. The air smelled of polish and rules. Servants bowed, but no one smiled. There was no mother to comfort her, no father to whisper bedtime stories, only tutors, maids, and the endless tick of the daily schedule. Mary's days were tightly controlled. Lessons in Latin, instruction in courtly manners, scripture memorized by candlelight. Even her mealtimes were quiet affairs, every spoonful taken under watchful eyes. Playtime was rare. And friends? Chosen for political gain, not for laughter. Her letters were read before they left the house. Her words weighed and measured. Mary was being shaped, molded into a symbol of perfection. But inside, she was still just a girl, longing for warmth. For a hug. For a moment where she didn't have to pretend. She learned to smile when spoken to curtsy without question, to keep her tears hidden behind velvet sleeves. An inevitable union, the consummation years later. Years passed. Mary grew taller. Her features softened into youth. But the freedom of childhood never came. By the time she turned 12, talk of consummation returned. The marriage had been official in title, but not in body. Now it was time to make it real. Lands and titles hung in the balance. Legitimacy was required. A child bride had to become a real wife. History doesn't tell us the exact moment it happened. The records go quiet, but the court whispered. The union was sealed. Mary, just 13 and was now a wife in every way the crown demanded. Her body was still growing, her voice still gentle and unsure, and yet she was expected to carry a child, to produce an heir, to bear the weight of womanhood. Before she even understood what it meant. The weight of expectation, pregnancy and fear. Soon after, Mary became pregnant. To the court, it was a cause for celebration, a sign that the alliance had succeeded. Gifts arrived from noble houses. Masses were held in her honor. Artists prepared to paint her with a hopeful glow. But for Mary, it was fear. Pure, quiet fear. She was barely 14. Her bones still delicate. Her back not strong enough for what lay ahead. Her body struggled. She grew pale. She tired easily. Physicians came and went in whispers. Servants moved carefully through the halls. The air in the house grew heavy, with dread. Still, the pressure didn't ease. A healthy son had to be born. Failure was not an option. Every moment felt like a countdown, not just to the birth, but to survival. A candle in the dark, the final hours. The night it happened was cold. A storm rolled across the countryside. Thunder echoed beyond the hills. As midwives rushed to Mary's chamber, candles flickered low, their flames weak against the darkness. A crucifix hung on the wall, its shadow dancing in the dim light. Mary cried out. Once, then again. The labor dragged on. The linens turned red. Outside the door, the Seymours waited, praying for a son, a future. Inside, Mary fought to stay alive. And then, it ended. At just 15 years old, she gave birth to a stillborn child. Her breathing slowed. Her skin turned grey. The life slipped from her, like smoke. The midwives tried, but it was too late. Her heart gave out, before the sun could rise. By morning, Mary Tudor, once a bride at 6, was gone. Forgotten too soon, the aftermath. The court mourned. Black robes replaced bright silks. Church bells tolled across villages and cities. But royal mourning is brief. New plans were already in motion, new alliances being drafted, new brides considered. Mary's name was carved into a cold slab of stone, a small inscription, no grand statue, no songs sung in her name, just a quiet grave. For a girl who never had a choice. Perhaps the Seymours grieved, or perhaps they simply looked to the future. Mary had served her purpose. A whisper in history. History remembers kings for their conquests, queens for their crowns, battles for their bloodshed. But what about the quiet tragedies? The girls married before they understood love. The children who died giving birth to children. The pawns who bore the cost of power. Mary Tudor was one of them. She never led an army, never ruled a kingdom, never lived long enough to leave her mark on the world. But in her short, sorrowful life lies a truth that lingers, that even a crown can become a cage. And sometimes the greatest tragedies wear silk and smile through tears. Subscribe, please, if you like it.